We will speak about operating gender and how women can contribute to developing internet prospects. To start with, I would like to stress that it is worth noting in Africa in particular and in the world in general, there is a bigger discrepancy, and women are hardest hit by lack of equality in many the economic gender inequality is affecting women most. The next slide, please. With regard to jobs, land property, and getting bank credits, as well as in different social aspects, and women representation in top management and high-ranking posts show a kind of discrimination against women. Hence, it is important to note how far can we incorporate gender in economic development, because women can greatly contribute to developing our economy, and all we need to do is to empower women and to enable women to develop their capacities to
non, moi je n'aime pas toi et moi nous sommes plus amis, Jacques-Éric. Tu aimes trop me menacer.
Family and our economic status. As for the future of internet,
Oui, tu me menaces trop, Jacques-Éric. Je ne sais pas pourquoi. Donc, toi, tu aimes me prendre avec l'émotion comme ça, je ne suis pas d'accord. Laisse-moi, toi et moi, nous sommes plus amis. Je te fais... Allô? Hein? Ok, d'accord, super, c'est bien. Quel argent?
Ok,
d'accord. Je vais l'appeler. Tu as payé combien?
Reviews the outcome of the African development
Merci.
on gender equality and economic development strategies in Africa.
Okay. Okay. Oui, c'est pas faux.
Sixth position, while Equatorial Guinea does not have enough prospects. Congo too doesn't have enough prospects in terms of gender equality in opportunities. As for the outcome of this study and human rights, we look at Cameroon as a number 27. She's out of 52 African countries. The table shows that with a lot needs to be done. Much effort must be presented We don't have enough information on gender equality. There is a real gap in different fields. From the legal point of view, the social and the economic aspect, African countries are faced with this situation and are greatly concerned. In Central Africa in particular, there are great concerns. So we have concluded a lot of conventions and taken measures to enable Central Africa in general and Cameroon to see how policies can be implemented on the ground to make women appear in their proper image and to enable women to participate actively in development. As members of the United Nations, we have adopted the 17 goals of the Millennium Objectives. 17 objectives are adopted and they include non-discrimination against women and girls. Women must have equal opportunities on equal footing with men in all aspects of life. Statistics on gender in Africa, we will stop at 3 points. First, education, employment, and ICT. We have found that these areas show that women don't have equality with men, especially in Cameroon. Women participation in ICT and women's share of employment show that women are discriminated against and don't have equal opportunities with men. To overcome these barriers, maximum efforts must be made. In a country like Cameroon, I'm speaking about Cameroon because I am from Cameroon and I belong to Cameroon. 21 and 2015 witnessed an illiteracy of adults and literacy increased among women. But in 2015, 31 women out of are suffering from illiteracy. We are looking for abolishing illiteracy by education and sensitization. These are the tools that we use to bridge the gender gap. We hope to do that through internet. This is the situation in Central African countries, with the exception of Gabon, where greater progress is achieved. As for statistics by the World Bank on Cameroon, the income, the girls' access to schools in 1992 was 92% of girls were enrolled in schools. 87% of girls reached high school. In 2013, 37% of girls reached high school. The government is making efforts to achieve gender equality in line with the UN Global development goals for the development of women and for establishing and promoting self-confidence so that women can contribute to the development of their countries. Inequality is also obvious in employment. In 2017, women's participation is expected to drop by 25% by the year 25. As for the statistics of 2015, 65% of women are elderly category. In 2013, women represented 46% of the labor force. This may be encouraging, but this is not enough. Accordingly, we present proposals to our respective governments to allow women to have a greater share in the fields they should participate in ICT. The statistics indicate that the blue on the map shows access to women by women is high all over the world, and in this graph, in Africa in general, access to internet and prevalence of internet is higher among men. Many men are connected with men while with internet, while few women have access to internet. The internet gap between men and women is 11% in 2016. And to bring 100,000 women connected with internet. They can use internet tools for self-development and for the development of their activities. In cities, women use internet, but in rural areas and in remote areas, women don't have access to internet. This project is meant to connect 100,000 women with the internet. There are partnerships with companies like Orange in Cameroon. Every year, for the past 2 years in particular, we organize training courses for women and provide girls with computers to have access to internet. The ministry is providing distant training online for women and people with special needs. In 2016, we established a forum called Africa Digital Enablement and Empowerment of Women by providing digital empowerment to enable women to take part in the digital economy. Women's activities and business are supported by internet, and this will promote their projects and entrepreneurial works. There are several initiatives, as you can see, but we still lag behind by 12%, and we need to catch up with the 12% lag, and although African countries are recognizing the importance of empowering women and enabling them to have access to education and to reach different sectors and to have access to tools that can help them in regional development and international development. But this is a long way ahead in many parts of the world, especially in our region. There are many reasons for that. So we understand that when we give girls equal opportunities like boys, they become intelligent women and may have the courage to take responsibility in a better way. Women can be active in looking after the family and the children and can help our children with their activities. And this in turn will reflect on the prospects of digital prospects. Integrating women in the digital world will enable women to do many things in a short time. And there are unfortunately are many obstacles, and they are due to things that don't have to do directly with women, but perhaps partly to women themselves. But there are reasons beyond women's control, like the standard of education. Few women have access to education and are enrolled in education. There is a high rate of illiteracy in Africa. And even when we allow women to have access to ICT, women must, as a precondition, must be literate. And this is a problem that affects many women, a lack of education in this region. In most cases in Africa, there are preconceived ideas and judgments against women. It is said women cannot enter this field. This is not a field for women. So women need to be encouraged to access ICT and the digital world. The government is working progressively to provide girls with chances to reach a technical knowledge through education and encouraging educational systems that incorporate women in the digital world. It all has to do with women's status until women can take part in decision making. When women are given specific responsibilities, they contribute to taking decisions in favor of women in Africa in general and in Cameroon and Central Africa. Women are and their status are not taken into account in decision making. So if we wanted to establish a water station, the decision is taken by authorities and women are not consulted about the place where the power plant or the water plant should be established, and women have to cut a long way to reach water. But women are concerned with that, but they are never consulted. In fact, there are also obstacles like the rural areas and other geographical areas where women are among the poorest and they work under hard conditions. There are also stereotypes that have to do with ethnicities and races and social and cultural consideration. There is also the community view of women and lack of confidence in women and the lack of role model women. Women who have made the progress, so they can be role models for other women. While ICT provides many opportunities to women, we must give women opportunities to be empowered. Empowering women opens opportunities and enhances capabilities and promotes women's participation in human development. Women are naturally enjoying some opportunities and they get access to foreign markets at the political and social level. Women must take part in decision making. They can be part of a decision making in Cameroon. There is a strategic plan designed to promote access to internet and to make this at a reasonable price. We want to introduce a digital education and we want to teach on business women to use internet and we hope that the recommendations will be women. We are against violence against women on internet. There is need for incorporating women in this field. Thank you for your good attention.
That was have lots of questions from her presentation. But before we get to you, maybe I'll go to Martha. Natalie mentioned that ICT provides opportunities for women and that we should empower women in such a way that they can benefit from these opportunities. If you could highlight for us what opportunities are there for women in ICTs and how can we best empower them to benefit from this?
Okay. First of all, I must say that I work in a very unconventional environment. It's a very youthful environment. It's not desks and formal tables. We can sit on the floor and work if we have to. So this is a bit strange for me to get used to this formal setup, but I'll still try to get with the program. But I see that there are a lot of women in this space. And for me, I always want to marry gender inclusion to the reality that technology should be neutral in its function, but it's applied in an environment that still experiences inequalities and imbalances. So if we're speaking about gender inclusion, then it must mean there's exclusion of some sort happening in certain sectors somewhere. And so when I think about opportunities for women in in technology for me, it starts from a place where we have to question the environment that we are applying technology in. What is that environment like? Now, if you look at me today, I'm from Zambia, and we don't wear our head wrap like this. We wear it differently. But I'm in Egypt. So I took it upon myself from the time that I arrived to try and understand the gender dynamics of this country and this meeting and this setting. And so I went to the market and I asked somebody to show me how to tie this head wrap the Egyptian way. And I would like to think I really did a good job. Did I not? I did, right? Yeah. Please, a hand for me. Thank you. Now, the reason why I did this is because I think of gender and technology as two independent things that are still married and they're still connected somehow. Now, I come from Zambia, and if I came with the mentality that in Zambia we tie the head wrap a certain way, it will automatically cause a conflict with you, because I would tell you that this is not how you tie a head wrap. You tie it the other way around. But I had to learn, I had to understand your environment, why you tie it a certain way, how much skill it takes to tie it this way and for it to come out this way. And I actually love it. I might try to wear it like this when I go back to my country. And for me, that's what inclusion means. It's not just a matter of showing someone the door. It's giving someone the keys to the door. It's not a matter of having 100 women sitting in this table. It's how are you allowing these women that are seated in this auditorium to have a voice, to contribute to the deliberations that are going on in here. And so for me, the opportunities that are there, and I think I'm really not going to stick to the slide. You really forgive me. You'll find the slide on the website when it goes up. But I feel like there's so many opportunities for women to be placed at the helm of creating technology and not only being users of technology. So for me, it's one thing to tell women you need to use technology and you need to get with the program and you need to move with the digital age. But how are we creating opportunities for women to code? How are we creating opportunities for women to program, to develop mobile applications, to define how their websites should look like, to define how their mobile applications should look like? And so I feel like I work for a technology hub and I'm presented with an opportunity to mentor young girls, and we allow young girls to come in and they don't have to have any kind of computer science experience. They can start learning how to code from as young as 10 years old. And just this year, in September, from mHub, we sent 2 girls to the global robotics competition because they developed a robot that would be able to enhance water and sanitation in Malawi. And so these are girls that actually built a robot from scratch. So I generally believe that the opportunity for women is not to tell us that we need to use technology. I think we've heard that conversation for such a long time. I think that in forums like this, we need to show women that they can create the technology. They can become the developers of technology. And that begins with understanding the environment that technology is being applied in. So I would pose a challenge to the gentlemen and to the people that sit on these policy decision making and policy forums where you're looking at policies that will guide the tech sector and that will guide internet governance, that the challenge really is you need to learn how we wrap the head wrap in the sense of technology. What are the challenges that women face in technology? Just before I came here in my country, there's a very famous motivational speaker who went online and he basically told his fellow gentlemen that they need to start looking outside Zambia to find a wife. And the reason why he told them that, he said, judging from what 95% of Zambian women post on Facebook and social media, we lack ambition, we lack intelligence, we lack skill. We're basically just there to, be slay queens and just wear the nice things and look pretty. And I had to ask this gentleman, I did get into a confrontation because I'm that girl. I did get into a confrontation, and I was asking, what kind of sampling is this? What kind of baseline study is this? Are you going to say 95% of Zambian women are not ambitious, they're not skilled, they're not good for anything other than being slay queens based on what they post on social media? So you have to understand that for us, we are judged so harshly, even in the era of technology. You can go online and post anything that you want to post online, and no one will take you to task for it. But as a woman, someone would judge my ability to engage and my skill and my entire future based on a Facebook post. And off of that, he will say 95% of these women are not ideal partners. And he actually said we need to change the quality of women that we marry. So we need to start looking outside of Zambia. Now that is a mentality. That is a mentality of someone who exists offline. And they are perpetrating that same mentality online in that space. So even in the industries, those inequalities and those imbalances are there. And I feel like there are so many opportunities for women to take the same kind of aggression that we take offline and the challenges that we face online. Don't worry, don't run the slide. They'll find it online. Because it's an era of technology. So I feel like the opportunities to create, the opportunities to innovate, the opportunities to build the technology are available for women, and we have to grab those opportunities. But also those that are creating the policies, those that are creating the environment have to take into consideration the imbalances and the attitudes and the general perceptions that the environments that we exist in has towards women. And until we understand the correlation between those two, technology will continue to advance and women will lag behind, because we are told, it's better for you to use the technology, not build the technology. So I feel like we are doing our part as my organization where I work from to teach young girls to create, to code, to program, to build websites. We have a platform called Ufuluwanga, and when the slide goes up on the website, you'll be able to see that a lot of the reports that are coming from the women in the community about abuse, about sexual violence, about rape, about all kinds of gender-based violence that they go through are in their local languages. So we've created a platform where women don't have to go to university to understand the language. They can create websites in their local languages, and they can post websites in their local languages, and they can post websites in their local languages, and they can post and it's the same with young people. It's the same with young girls. So if we can have young girls, Shreya and Rebecca, as young as 14 and 16, building a robot to enhance water and sanitation, because they realize that women are the most affected when we don't have water and sanitation, because obviously we have to go on our menstruals. I hope it's okay to talk about such stuff in a public forum, but it's the reality. So how do we use technology to address real problems in society? So I think the challenge is, let's see how we can learn how to wrap the technology head wrap properly in a way that it can include the environment and take into consideration the environment within which technology is being implemented. Then we can talk about inclusion, as opposed to just having all these discussions and saying women can do better, but not taking into consideration that the environment is not very balanced. And so the use of technology won't be balanced either. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha. Girl power going on here. The ladies in the house, you must be happy with these presentations. And now we have a regulator in the house. Where I come from, every time you stand up and you're a regulator, you're in trouble. They don't like regulators. Egypt, do you like regulators?
Who said no?
So Ramy, we want to hear from a regulator's perspective. New technology, does it present a regulatory challenge?
Well, there are challenges everywhere, of course. But before answering to that question, let us first try to understand what the issues are. So I'll try to very fastly, I think we have some limited time.
Very limited time, 10 minutes max.
10 minutes, I'll take 15 if that is possible.
Regulators.
Yeah. Okay, so basically I'm going to um, show you today a couple of emerging technologies. I think my colleague here on my left introduced a couple of those. So let's get into it directly. Next slide, please. So basically, I'm going to show you some key emerging technologies and then have a closer look at two technological trends. That's of the Internet of Things, and the other one is a blockchain or digital ledger technologies. And then we'll conclude with some potential policy options. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll start with the very famous Gartner hype curve. As you can see, this is the latest curve for the latest technologies in 2017. As you can see, there are so many technologies out there. Some have already reached to the potential maturity stage. Others are currently emerging. If we can see the Internet of Things, blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, all these aspects have different phases of maturity. We see, for example, from that particular curve, the artificial intelligence needs still sort of 10 years to reach to a maturity stage, while at this moment, we can see, for example, Internet of Things platforms already are there in the market. So these type of discrepancies, perhaps let me prioritize in a way the way I'm going to structure my presentation. So I thought I should focus on the things that we are currently witnessing in the market. That's the Internet of Things. Potentially the blockchain have a maturity stage from 5 to 10 years. So that would be next. The AI, I would love, of course, if there was time to tackle aspects related to AI, but I won't tackle it in depth in that particular presentation. Probably I could take it offline. Next slide, please. Gartner has identified three major trends in the industry right now. The first major theme or the first major trend is AI everywhere, artificial intelligence everywhere. It's coming, deep learning, deep reinforcement learning, taxonomy, ontology, autonomous vehicles, etc. So many terminologies, so many technologies out there, but that's a major classification, AI everywhere. So this is the first fundamental trend. The second fundamental trend is immersive experience, transparently immersive experience. We have seen some new products and some new solutions where augmented reality is being integrated with smartphones and even with, for example, our TV screens inside homes. So there's a movement right now where specific technologies are being used, are being integrated in every part of our lives. The third trend is the digital platforms. And by the digital platforms, that could mean a lot of things, from quantum computing to, for example, blockchain is also considered one of those particular aspects, to IoT platforms. Next slide, please. So what is the problem? There are issues associated with these particular trends. If you take a look at the Internet of Things, for example, well, usually that particular line of technologies is usually associated with aspects related to security, to privacy related to the data, where the data is stored, who accesses the data, who has control over my personal information, etc. Also notions related to cloud security, interoperability, vendor lock-in, and identification aspects. So every single aspect of these particular issues brings regulatory challenges brings obviously policy implications to that. Blockchain also, when you talk about blockchain, usually the term blockchain is associated with anonymity. For example, you cannot identify the users who are using the blockchain system, and that's the general consensus in the field. So in a way or another, that also contradicts with the aspect of security and identification, because in order to have accountability, in order to be accountable for your actions, you need to be identified over the network. Yet there's a movement right now in the industry, blockchain, everybody's talking about blockchain, and we'll see in a couple of slides that it really isn't a new thing. It has been there since the 70s. Anyway, so blockchain, associated with blockchain is anonymity, as I said, accountability, decentralized platforms, smart contracts, permission versus permissionless ledgers. Permissioned means that every particular node participating in a blockchain network should have a particular permission. For example, a centralized authority would say that that particular node is allowed to write on the ledger while that node is not allowed. So this is a permission setup. Permissionless is the commonly witnessed trend right now in the industry. Every node can participate. There's no permissions. Anyone can do whatever he likes. When it comes to AI, artificial intelligence, again, there's the notion of autonomy. Of course, there's a very, very crucial aspect related to predictability. Artificial intelligence agents or artificial intelligence programs are not predictable. You cannot really know what would the machine do next. And perhaps in that particular context, it's wise to recall that, for example, some countries have began thinking of giving nationality to robots. We have heard, for example, in the past few months that Saudi Arabia has given the first nationality for the Sophia robot in its Neom city. It's a I can tell you right now that really nobody understands how, for example, a heuristic algorithm, it depends on many variations. It depends on uncertainty. So you provide the program with a tool to self-replicate, to evolve, and you have no idea how the program will end up at the end of its operation. And that brings uncertainty. And with uncertainty, you would get mistrust. And with no trust, you cannot really rely on these parts or these technologies, for example, to do whatever you would like to do. Next slide, please. So let's have a deeper look at the Internet of Things. I'll start by the widely reported figures. There are so many figures out there. Some say that over 50 billion connected devices would be there in 2020. McKinsey, for example, said that 75 billion connected devices would be there by 2025, maybe more, maybe less. Regardless of how they brought these figures, they are all assumptions, they are all predictions, but it is clear that in 5 to 10 years from today, the number of connected devices would be immense. And of course, advocates of IoT, I'm one of the strongest advocates of this industry. As I told you, I'm leading standardization effort in the ITU. I'm vice chairman of Study Group 20, which develops standards in that particular domain. So I'm very enthusiastic about that. And let's see what the industry experts are saying about it. They're saying that in 10 years, I mean, after 10 years, at the end of 10 years from today, the global economic impact of the IoT would reach 10 trillion US dollars annually. This is a huge amount of economical boost, right? So next slide, please. However, if you take a closer look, if you take a deeper look at all the, I wouldn't say claims, there are of course some evidence of some reported improvements in the operation of the network. However, if you take a look at all the messages, key messages provided by the solutions providers, by the companies, by the forums, it's always with disclaimers. Nobody says that it's going to happen without a particular disclaimer. For example, IoT usually promises new revenue stream for businesses, but you would find a small only if policies support it. It's not there for granted, it's not taken for granted. Only if policies support the IoT proliferation, then you would find, or you may potentially find new revenue streams for businesses. It promises cost savings in a wide number of industries, cost operational efficiencies. However, usually that is accompanied by only if regulations allowed. It promises prediction capabilities for business, for individuals, for government, for cities, for everything. Only if there are interoperability between those different solutions, and for interoperability you need standards. That's why only if standards are there. And if you take a look at this, at the technology landscape, you can find more than 1,000 products out there in the industry, which makes standardization really very, very tough. It's very difficult. So the message that I want to say is that it's not taken for granted. Everybody's saying IoT, and in a couple of minutes I'll also tell you everybody's saying blockchain. However, it's not there for granted. There are some conditions. Of course, the last line it's only a joke. IoT promises very good sci-fi movie only if there are good movie producers. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, and basically the fundamental reason for the advocates of the IoT is that they say that higher the number of connected devices out there in the network, the higher the value. That fundamental premise is called Metcalfe's law. It's very famous. Most of the companies are saying it. Most of the industrial experts are saying that. It says simply that while the cost of the network grows linearly, the value of the network, that's what you get out of the connectivity, goes by n square, exponentially. So exponentially, of course, exponential growth is higher than linear growth, and accordingly you have value. But the counter argument for that particular premise is that, okay, so I am a company, I put a bunch of sensors out there, I have made total automation for my infrastructure, I use an IoT platform, and I'm waiting for the money. Where's the money? It's not there. Why? Well, perhaps Metcalfe's law is wrong. And this is very interesting. Well, indeed, Metcalfe's law may be wrong because the underlying premise or the underlying idea behind that particular law is that equal value is assigned to all nodes in the network. For example, I have more than 1,000 contacts in my telephone here, in my mobile phone. So that could be considered as sort of a connectivity. But I do not call or establish connection between every single contact every day. Usually I call about 3 to 4 to 5, maybe 10 people frequently These are the nodes, these are the endpoints which provide the highest value to me. I'm a particular node in the telephone network, but I only call 10 to 20 people maximum. However, I have more than 1,000 connected point in the network. So it cannot be n square. It cannot be, this is the idea. And accordingly, we would like to say, take it easy. It's not connectivity that works. Next slide, please. But if it is not connectivity that works, what is it then? What is the secret sauce? What is the secret ingredient which brings value to any connected network and accordingly to any IoT deployment? Well, there are many ingredients. Ingredients like performance, expected effort, expected ease of use, trust. And I'm going here to focus a little bit on trust. If you see, those ingredients are not something out of my head. These were based on scientific investigations. For example, there are laws or there are models which mimic how technologies penetrate inside societies. Technologies are not spread inside societies like that. There are factors which affect the penetration aspects, and these factors are based from sciences like anthropology and social sciences. But anyway, let's focus on trust, and if you go to the next slide, please. So trust, in my opinion, is one of the most fundamental aspects which would enable any system to penetrate inside any particular society. And if you take a look at how trust is defined, trust is the willingness of any party to be vulnerable to the actions of any other party based on the expectations that the other would perform in my benefit. For example, we all trust banks. You entrust all your funds, all your assets to banks, but you have no idea whether a bank official or a bank employee is actually a genuine one. How does he operate? For example, is he a professional guy? What does he do? You don't know him and you don't see him, yet you chose to trust that entity because there are other aspects. Next slide, please. So basically, there are two factors which affect trust in any system. The first factor is the disposition predictability, aspects related to ability. Predictability, of course, is that the extent to which the system performs in a way predictable to me. I know exactly the outcome. And the reason I put that particular element here is that it links to AI. If you take a look, artificial intelligence is highly unpredictable. So accordingly, you cannot trust it. And that what makes it till this moment perhaps at the very bottom of the hype cycle. It needs from 5 to 10 years to reach to maturity. The ability, if the ability of the system, if you trust the ability of the system, then you would have a higher inclination to trust it. The integrity and the benevolence. The integrity means that the intrinsic moral norms of a trustee to guard his actions, for example, with sincerity, with honesty, complies with my norms. Benevolence is that if I believe that the system is acting in my good well-being or in my favor, then I would be more inclined to trust it. Next slide, please. So which impact trust more? Is it the propensity to trust or the trustee characteristics? Well, scientists have discovered that if there are no available information on the particular system itself, if the characteristics of the trustee are not there, are not clear, then the key factor which would affect my trust for the system would be my propensity of trust, my inclination, my tendency, my general tendency. If I, for example, if I'm a skeptic person by nature and there is no available information on that particular system available out there, I don't know how it works, I don't know who's behind it, I don't know anything about it, then it will be totally left to my personal traits. And this is very important in the context of Internet of Things, because if you take a look at IoT, what is IoT? It's a bunch of sensors, gateway, you collect the data and store it in a cloud service provider. You have no way of knowing how your data is being treated, where is the data stored, where physically, where exactly is it stored, who accesses them, and is the company operating, for example, if you have a very evil guy, someone who you know for sure that he's not a good man, and he's bringing to you the most magnificent set of technological tool, would you trust him? Of course not. Next slide, please. So that was a very deeper look at IoT. Let's have a closer look at blockchain. I'll finish in 5 minutes.
Remy, I'm going to ask you to do it in 2 minutes.
Okay. Take a closer look at blockchain. Next slide, please. So some digital ledger technologies, key ideas. What is blockchain? Blockchain is simply a means to provide decentralized control for any service. Some key ideas, for example, it is based on consensus. It uses embedded software logic to perform pre-built-in function, and it provides crypto functions or crypto modules to provide fidelity for writing on any particular ledger. You're putting me on a very tough spot. I'll have to wrap up my slides. So perhaps the key idea that I would like, if you go next slide, please. Yes, perhaps here. I would claim that blockchain is not a new thing. Perhaps this is a key message that it might be worth of mentioning. The idea of blockchain is that you bring a transaction of data or a transaction of information, you encrypt it, and you use the result of the encrypted block and use it as an input for the subsequent block, which is going to be encrypted one more time. That idea is called chaining, blockchaining. And the cipher blockchaining mode of encryption has been there since the 70s, as I mentioned earlier. So it's not new. Everybody's saying blockchain, blockchain. Blockchain is not new. It's an application. We have used that in crypto systems like 20 years ago. Accordingly, what is blockchain? Next slide, please. Blockchain is simply an encryption problem plus peer-to-peer. The idea is that we have a ledger. What is a ledger? A ledger is a database. It's a simple database. Think of a SQL database or an Access database. But instead of putting the database in a centralized point, it's distributed on all the nodes participating in the networks. It's like peer-to-peer. And I have to finish.
Yes, you do.
And accordingly, I would be happy to receive any questions related to whatever you like in the area of IoT or blockchain. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Remy. And I apologize for putting him on pressure. Clearly, he's very passionate about his presentation, but Remy will be available during coffee break. Now, we have one last panelist, Mr. Ephraim Kenyanito. He was not here when the panelists introduced themselves. Mr. Kenyanito, we just want to know, privacy and data protection have come up a lot in all the panelists' presentations. In 5 minutes, and I am going to be strict, in 5 minutes, please give us a brief on how best we can protect our data and ourselves.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. I would just want you to open my slide and open the 10th page.
Ephraim, if you could just give a brief introduction of yourself as well.
Okay, so as I give my brief introduction, I would urge the slide to be open. My name is Ephraim Pasi Kenyanito. I'm from Kenya. I work at Article 19 Eastern Africa. I work on the digital program. I lead the digital program, mostly working with lawyers, with journalists, with governments, with companies, trying to reform their policies and ensure that the environment ensures, the legal environment ensures that there is freedom of expression and information for everyone, both online and offline. Privacy has come up a lot. I will just mention a bit. Privacy is a prerequisite to enjoy freedom of expression. There's a court case which was at the African Commission, and also in our national jurisdictions, we've had the same kind of thoughts whereby we cannot guarantee, the court says that you cannot guarantee someone their right to freedom of expression if they don't have privacy. I would really urge if those slides were available, because I think I sent them. Just talking about a research which we did last year and linking this with gender. Article 19 Eastern Africa did a research last year where we interviewed journalists, and most of them, the female journalists, expressed 53% of them were on Facebook, 86% of them were on WhatsApp, 61% of them used email for their work, mobile voice, 96%. And 75% of them had experienced online harassment, including an infringement of their privacy. So linking this to the discussion about gender that the panelists have talked about. And some of these led to the withdrawal of them being online. So we see we are pushing people offline when we don't respect their privacy, when companies, when governments, when civil society actors don't educate these users on how to best respect their privacy, best secure their privacy. Some of them had you walk naked. You are either sick or you're mad, right? Most of the time, your mother at home, as a grown person, grown man or grown woman, they'll interpret you either sick or you're mad. So they expect you. There are those expectations that you would cover yourself. So privacy is something which is inherent in our traditions, in our laws. And just highlighting about privacy, there is I just wanted to say, in Africa, we have all these companies. We talked about IoT. We talked about mandatory SIM card registration. We talked about data collected for election purposes. And those people from Somaliland, their elections last month, they used iris technology to validate voters. That's the first use of iris technology for elections in anywhere in the world. So ask yourself if this data is leaked. Last month, but on October, there was a leak of 30 million citizens in South Africa. Their personal data, including where they live, their real names, and some of their banking information was leaked. 30 million citizens. And the good luck with South Africa, they have data protection laws. There's a legal mechanism of how to go back to get a recourse and how to. So ask yourself, these 30 million citizens, where was this data, including where you live, your real home, leaked online? Not because the internet is bad and all that. I don't want to preach that. I just want to say, let's have privacy laws. Out of 55 countries, you only have 9 regulators, data protection regulators in Africa. What are we doing to push this? And 12 countries have data protection laws in force. 14 countries have drafts in force. And I've noticed the time is almost up. Yes, just go to slide 17. Slide 17. On surveillance in Africa by states, corporations. Yes, the previous slides. Yes, there. This is the slide I wanted to go to. If you look at the amount of money invested in infringement of privacy, this is some data from Hacking Team Leak. Hacking Team is a company that has been selling surveillance spyware software to our governments and to some private individuals. Look at that data. Some of the amount of money invested annually, the amount of money total, and I'll link this to the report which was released yesterday about the Manchester bombing in the UK. There was data collected in mass surveillance, data collected. This data, if it was targeted surveillance, the attack could have been prevented. So we are investing a lot of money to collect all data from all citizens, and it makes it hard for intelligence agencies to sift the real data, the real threat. So that threat was there amongst, so it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing this, but then look at some of the investment, and you tell some of the countries are investing in mass surveillance and not able to thwart attacks, while others are investing, for example, the Egypt one, investing in targeted. So think about what you are doing as an individual, as a regulator. Are you having these conversations? Next slide. So talking about some of the other countries, you see this is data from companies which were hacked. These are companies which our governments trusted to install stuff on their networks, and they were hacked, those companies themselves. So we are outsourcing surveillance to, next slide, to other companies. This is just a summary of some of the major companies and some of their clients. And some of them are getting hacked. That's why we are able to have access to some of this information. This information is public information. If you are a privacy researcher, you'd be surprised to know what your company, what your government is buying and what is the purpose, and is it able to thwart attacks. Like, for example, if you look at the Manchester bombing report, which was timely, it was released yesterday, and there was a discussion about it. Are we able to, let's stop using security as a scare threat to violate freedom of expression. And for example, I'll use the South Africa example. South Africa, there's a current court case about police officers who used this technology on journalists who are investigating police corruption. So some of this technology is being misused in the name of security, and it's not for the right purpose. So let's have a conversation around privacy and security. And beyond that, next slide, connection on business and human rights. Let's find a way of having business and human rights national action plans in our national governments and in our plans on human rights. Next slide. I'm gonna just rush. Encryption. This is a conversation I want us to have. In Africa, we are seeing a trend of trying to regulate encryption, especially in electronic transaction laws. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but then let's not regulate our technology just because we are scared. Encryption is something we use every day in our ATMs. If we ban encryption, like certain parts of, I'm not going to mention countries here, but certain countries in Africa, some of them, it's kind of illegal to even have trainings on encryption, on digital security. Why are we having this kind of fear of technology while this technology is good? So let's find a balance. even with IoT. The advance of IoT will require more use of encryption. So the last slide, just the next one. Yes, I'll just mention these principles for you people to look at. The international principles on application of human rights communication surveillance. They're called necessary and proportionate principles. These are principles which we need to have conversation. In Kenya right now, the cybersecurity laws kind of have been drafted with this, the second draft, the new draft that is out there right now, with these principles in mind. And the next slide, the African principles. Next slide. Yes, African Declaration on Internet Freedom and Internet Rights and Freedoms. This is a declaration which was cited at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in Gambia last year in November in their resolution 362 on internet freedom of expression on the internet. So these are principles which we need to embed in our, even in our emerging technologies, in our IoT, in our work. We need to look, these are principles which were developed in Africa. I'm not going to give the whole history and all that. These are some conversations we need to have. These are tough conversations we need to have. And I'll be glad to have these conversations later beyond the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ephraim. I am going to request for 10 minutes. I know it is tea time, but I can already see hands up. So can we proceed? 10 minutes? Okay. The lady first, then the gentleman, and then the second Ephraim in the house.
My name is Hadi Al-Minyawi. I work with the National Telecom Regulatory Authority of Egypt. And I have two questions. One is for Ramy and the other is for our last panelist. To Ramy, it's a comment and a question. So Ramy, you talked about the value that the nodes bring to the Internet of Things. And I would say that the main value that the sensors or nodes bring, it's actually the information that they gather. So I think the big challenge and the big question is, how are we going to make use of all this information gathered? And will this bring and in other continents, not Africa, have already put laws in place that force tech companies to hand in information if required. So that actually poses a big thing on companies using encryption, because they need to have a backdoor. Because if you're forced to hand in information and you cannot decrypt the information, how will you be able to hand it over? And maybe WhatsApp is one of the, I'm not talking particular, but there are many cases in which, you know, so companies will need to have some backdoors. Also, I would like to listen to your comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to request that we keep the questions and the comments brief and direct, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Reda Gailouz from the Tunisian ICT Association. Marta, you can't imagine how deep I agree with you, saying that our girls are technology consumers much more than creators. But let me also tell you that it is the case for boys. It is the case of all Africa. We are consumers. Look what has been said by Ramy, that blockchain is not something new. You are dealing with it with some 10 years delay. This is the real issue we have to face. Look, we have now some issues, emerging issues to deal with, GTLDs, IPv4 to IPv6. These are things that other regions of the world have already faced. We are still to face this. Now, something more. If we start talking about the future, tell me how many people in Africa are involved in research activities at the level of ITU study groups. DOA, Digital Object Architecture, is a very big issue, and it's really important for the whole development process. So how many people in our region are involved in this? So I think this is a very important. Okay, 5G is also something important. Tell me how many industries are investing in research in this field. It means that the future is being shaped somewhere else. It is not shaped with us, and consequently, it is not shaped for us. Let's think about that when it comes to emerging issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that comment. There was Ephraim there. Then I will allow the panel to first respond.
Okay, thank you. Tijani speaking. Thank you very much, Ramy, for this presentation. And I am really sad that you didn't have the opportunity to finish your presentation. You spoke about Internet of Things, and this is really an emerging issue. You spoke especially about storing data. I don't know if we have to elaborate on that, but you are talking about what is happening now. Now they are using the RF system to make Internet of Things. But since we don't have yet the IPv6, we cannot speak about Internet of Things. And in the future, you will reach any device, anything, exactly as you reach today, my computer or any other computer. So perhaps this phase of storing data will not be necessary. And I am sure you know that in the future, collecting data will be something very difficult to do, because there is regulation now against connecting data or regulating connecting data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last question from Ephraim. I am under a lot of pressure. People at the back keep pointing out that it is time. So 5 minutes only for the panel to respond after that questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Keith, and thank you very much for putting time consciousness into this. My question really was around what the third questionnaire really put through, and my concern was about data residency. We are talking about the emerging technologies, and if you look at all these emerging technologies, from Internet of Things to AV to AI and all those sorts of things, we are not really keen on where this data is stored. Yeah, when you're talking about, Ephraim gave an example of South Africa and how 35 million, information of users who are leaked online. The question really revolves around data residency. Where is this data being stored? We are taking up cloud as an alternative for many services, either as a service or whatever thing it is, but we're not keen on where this data is. For example, I trust Google with all my private information, my private photos and everything, but do I know where this is stored? Brazil, for example, made it mandatory for, if you want to operate in Brazil, you have to store all the data you're collecting in Brazil, let it be stored in Brazil. What is Africa doing in terms of making sure that the African data is stored in Africa. Maybe that is just one thing we need to, proactively look at to ensure that the African data collected by either African companies or big corporations is stored in Africa, so that we have control of data both in motion and when it is stored.
Thank you. I think there were two questions, Ramy and Ephraim, and then the rest were mainly comments. Ramy, you go first. Very brief.
Okay, thank you. So, so many questions, so many issues. We will definitely have an offline discussion completing that. I had a question, I think, or a comment on information and the value of the IoT. Where does it reside, or where does it really, where is it? Well, yes, of course, you bring information by using analytics and big data analytics. For example, data are stored either way. They are raw data. They have to be stored somewhere. And in order to drive value, the real value comes from two main things. The first are the potential indicators or KPIs or metrics, the predictions based on these particular raw data. So this is one point. Companies make a lot of money out of analytics. So this is one aspect. However, there's also usually outlooked aspect. It's called semantic interoperability. You provide meanings to data, because otherwise, if I don't know that this is a bottle of water, then I will not be able to use it. I need to know that this is water. This is something that can be drunk. It's good for my health. And accordingly, I have a conclusion. If I don't understand the real meaning of a bottle of water and the real meaning of the terms behind the raw data, then it would make no sense. So this is very quickly my comment on that. When the question related to how many people in Africa are engaged in technology development, yes, you're right, absolutely right. However, I'm saying that there's an opportunity for Africa right now to develop these particular types of technology. Why? Because you do not need foundational industrial infrastructure. You don't need silicon fabs in order to manufacture, for example, an IoT device. You simply need a couple of young, talented engineers who know software development, and the knowledge and skills needed to develop software . Well, there are two types of IoT in the industry. Internet of Things for local devices, local interconnected devices. I do not need to interconnect on external networks, and accordingly, I may not need IPv6 at all. But the capabilities of devices, the very small form factor, I cannot store tons of information on it, tons of data. I need some repositories. It's as simple as that. As long as the devices itself are limited in capacity, in computing capacity, in storage capacity, there would always be a need to store data. And accordingly, furthermore, you would of course need software or some algorithms to extract information out of this data. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ramy.
Okay, just to answer the two questions on data protection and encryption. On encryption, I'll just refer you to the United Nations Special Rapporteur report, which was released in May 2015, Special Rapporteur David Kay on freedom of expression, where he said there should be a three-part test. Is it legal? Is it necessary? Is it proportionate under those circumstances? So, for example, in the African context, we've seen a blanket ban, which is not necessary or proportionate. You can't just ban totally the use of encryption in some parts of Africa. You can, maybe you would require that it's necessary at the time. For example, the European way, whereby companies store a copy of the decryption key, and it's provided only when it's necessary during an investigation, during a targeted investigation, but not blanket access. For example, if a company, let's say Facebook, was storing all the passwords of all the users, and then this data is openly accessible to all law enforcements in the world, that would be, so many people have access to this data. There's no accountability unless it's necessary. That's when a government would approach a company and ask for this specific data of this specific user. So it's much more targeted. It's much more effective even for intelligence purposes. As I gave the example of the Manchester bombing, if it's targeted, it's specific. It's not just blanket. You have too much data. You can't know who is who when you're doing your intelligence analysis. On data residency, Keith and Dara's question, I mentioned this. There are only 9 regulators in Africa who work on data protection. We need to work more to take our data of our African users more seriously. The European Union have a GDPR which is coming into force next year. In Africa, we are not that serious yet. We need to show more seriousness with the data of our users. Our data is being used to do analytics of health, among other things, without users' consent. And this is how the 30 million data for the South African users, including their home addresses, were leaked. So let's take our African user data more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we've taken up a lot of time, but I know this was also a very interesting discussion, which we can continue during tea time. Please join me in clapping for this panel. They've done a great job.
Thank you very much. I think they have taken a little bit more time. So the next session will start at 11 sharp. Please take your coffee. Maybe you can bring it to the room if you want, but we're starting at 11 sharp. Thank you.